Well, certainly first I would like to welcome you on behalf of Carrie and Trey, their families, their friends. All of you friends who have gathered here is a sure sign, a sign of love and a sign of support for this great endeavor, perhaps the greatest endeavor either of them will encounter in this entire life on earth. That is a solemn and sacred opportunity to come together as one in the sight of God and His church. And the fact that you're here is testimony and witness to your support of them, to your support of this endeavor on their behalf. In all honesty, nowadays, marriage is not in full favor. It's not as what it always used to be, and you see fewer and fewer people getting married. And so when I see a young couple that come to me and ask for preparation, that they want to enter into this encounter with Jesus and each other with such seriousness, but a sense of joy and hope, it gives me joy and hope to be a part of that process and to see the smiling faces of the people here gathered to support them also is great testimony and witness to the success that we hope and pray that this marriage will encounter. The readings that we had today, what we just heard from our wonderful lectors and in our gospel reading, are readings that testify to the greatness of God, His love for us. In the Old Testament reading, we hear from the prophet Jeremiah that God is going to establish a great covenant. What is a covenant but a complete and full giving over, a vow beyond vows that can never be broken? And God has never broken a covenant. And He tells the prophet Jeremiah to tell all of us that He's going to make this great covenant with His people because He loves us. And He says that all shall know me through this covenant. St. Paul tells us how to live this covenant in the New Testament reading to the Colossians. He tells us how to live, and he gives these simple instructions about kindness and generosity and things like that. But on top of all of that, and the most important thing, and the thing that binds it and us all together, is love. So we see this covenant, this law God writes upon our hearts. And in the New Testament, we see that law is love and expressed most fully in love. And so then we start to realize in this Gospel of Matthew that marriage is something that is to be lived as a light for the world. And going back to the concept that fewer people are getting married, fewer young people are encountering each other in that way, the law of God, but also the love of God, and then living that together. This Gospel from St. Matthew tells us that we have to let our light shine, and the fact that their marriage is going to be public witness to God's love. It will bear testimony to God's love to all those they encounter. It's a sign. Matthew tells us it's a sign. But you have to ask, it's a sign of what? What is this sign? How do we encounter the sign? How do we know it's a sign? And how do we know that it means anything? And the best way that I can answer that, not only for Trey and Carrie, but for all of you, and even for myself, is that sign is borne out in a simple phrase and a simple concept, which has also escaped, I think, our modern culture in these days. And that is that words mean things. Words mean things. So often we shout each other, we call each other names, we do all these things, maybe even in the name of God, but we don't often stop and think about what those words mean. And is there meaning behind those words? Tonight you're going to hear two of the most simple, small, easy to say words that will carry more impact, I think, than the greatest orators, theologians, writers, poets have ever dreamed up and have ever written about. These two simple words are going to be uttered by each Trey and Carrie when they say, "I do." They're powerful words. If you understand what's happening, and we see these readings, and God's talking about covenants, and Paul is talking about love, it's a love that never ends. And so if words truly mean things, when Trey says, "I do," and when Carrie says, "I do," they have to mean it. Because it's born out of covenant. In fact, God was the first one to say, "I do." God said, "I do" to the people of Israel. The people of Israel, if you remember in your scriptures, the prophet Isaiah told us that God, our Creator, would marry the people of Israel. He said, God will marry you as a young man marries a virgin, that your land will be espoused. That's how God described his covenantal relationship with the people of God. He married them. And if you've heard the expression about Jesus being the bridegroom and the church is his bride, Jesus married the church. Another covenant and the sign of a covenant. And now to this very day, even 2,000 years after the time of Jesus, man marries woman. And the two of them in a covenantal relationship are born together into one flesh. To live the law of God, but to live in love. In that total self-giving love. Jesus showed that on the cross. He died. He loved us so much that he would die for us. How many of us can say that about the one we love? And yet when we say, I do, that's what we're saying. I love you to the end of time. I love you to the very depths of my soul. I love you on a covenantal level. I love you as God loves his people. They're powerful words. So they're not words to be skipped over. They're words to be lived. Not only at this moment when we say I do, but every day of Trey and Carrie's life, they need to say I do to each other. Get up in the morning and say I do. Go to bed at night and say I do. People are always wondering, what's the secret of marriage? It's the total gift of oneself to the other. It's not for me, it's for you. I do. I give myself to you over and over again. And I promise you, those two words will bind you together all the days of your life. And the fact that you're gathered here with your family and friends, they must say, I do as well. Last night at the rehearsal dinner, I got a chance to meet all of them. What an enjoyable bunch. What a fantastic family. What great friends. I got to talk to so many of them and ask them, like, well, what do you do? And why do you do things? Where do you know this person? And I'm going to tell you, every single one of them had some heartfelt passion, some desire to live life to its full, to help save the world. But to be here for Carrie and for Trey, what an awesome gift that is that you can continue to give to them. So bridal party, all the family, friends, grandparents, mothers, fathers, all those gathered here, your love and support is what's going to enable them to I do every day of their life. So please don't ever give up on that. And don't ever think they don't need to hear from me anymore. They do. And you just need to call them up and say, hey, I do, by the way. They'll know what you're saying. They'll remember this homily. They'll say, I do. And Trey and Carrie, these are your strength. God gave them to you. As wacky as some of your family members are, beautiful souls, heartfelt souls who say, I do. They said, I do for you, and they continue to say that to you. So know that they're your strength. Having met them, now I know exactly why Trey is like he is and why Carrie is like she is. You're beautiful souls. You got all that flavor, all that zest, all that life poured into you. And now you'll pour it into each other. And hopefully as a light on a lampstand, that light will shine to everyone that sees you happily and beautifully married. So if you're ready to say, I do, join me in front of the altar.